Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Amanda, and I cover all sorts of topics about how the world as we know it is rapidly changing. One of the things I focus on are changes in society and culture, specifically relationships between men and women. I think this is a really important, I'd say, like a fault line or fracture point within our society, and how we relate to one another is really going to shape what the future looks like. Some of the stuff I have covered on here has been quite negative, just focusing, in my opinion, how feminism has really done a disservice to men. And I don't think women are really holding themselves accountable for their actions and just have made the operating environment for everyone a lot more difficult. But today I wanted to highlight a little bit of a more optimistic outlook on how things are going, because I think it's important to balance the negativity with some positive framing of just how things are going. So this is a piece that was published in the Free Press by Susie Weiss, and it's called "The Case for Dating Abundance." She starts this essay off framing it around a new film that was released. It's called Oh Hi. I am completely out of the loop on like media and movies and stuff. Hollywood just sucks, in my opinion. A lot of the stuff they've been producing the past, decade or so has been just super woke, and not even like woke in a bad sense, just really just pushing too much. They're just trying to check all the diversity boxes, the whole remake with classics like Snow White. Nothing is new. I mean, there's a Happy Gilmore 2 on Netflix right now. Why do we need Happy Gilmore 2? I think they remade Mean Girls as well, which is a classic girl culture film that I reference all the time in my videos. So I just think a lot of the stuff coming out of Hollywood just is unoriginal. They're unnecessary sequels, and then whatever is coming out, there's just such an ideological bend to it. I just can't watch it. So I've kind of more or less given up on Hollywood. So this is completely new to me, but apparently this is a movie that is considered a romantic comedy. I grew up in the Matthew McConaughey world of romantic comedies. I wouldn't consider something like this a romantic comedy, but that's neither here nor there. So it's called Oh Hi. Basically, a girl and a guy go on a romantic weekend together. The girl and the guy do things. She talks about their relationship. He's like, just kidding. I don't really want a relationship. She calls her friend in. They try to perform some magic on him to convince him that she's the one. And then he tries to escape. And the whole plot, I don't know, I read it and it just seemed kind of weird. So if you saw this or know anything about this movie, I would love your take on it. So anyways, Susie casts this piece that she's written within the context of that film. I think the big takeaway that she describes here is that just guys and girls are looking for different things right now. And a lot of that is being shaped by just the cultural zeitgeist and how men and women are both approaching relationships, but we're not really on the same page. So she writes, then later he told her he's just not looking for a relationship. He thought the past 4 months they had spent together was just them hanging out and having fun. Shudder. You spent time wooing me and pursuing me, protested Iris, one of the main characters in the film. His suggestion that they weren't so serious provoked twin emotions in her. One's many modern single women will relate to: rage and desire. And I understand this. Women don't handle rejection well, and women don't understand how men can decouple things. And I'm guilty of this. Women look for meaning in everything. And so if you're in a relationship and you're ascribing meaning, or you're deriving meaning from it, I could see why someone like her would have both rage and desire. But it just, I don't know, it kind of highlights where folks are at. So she goes further into this piece, and she talks about a piece that was written in the New York Times Magazine. I have done a whole separate video on that. I will link it in the description below. But it basically talks about this concept called heterofatalism, which is basically the incel equivalent for women. How women are basically so fed up with dating that they would rather be lesbians, pretty much. Like they just feel cursed by their attraction to men and the fact that men aren't living up to their expectations, aren't pursuing them, don't desire them, and that women would just be better off, if they were gay. It's a very strange essay, I personally thought. So anyways, and then she also goes into a second New York Times article about mankeeping. This, I had also done a piece on this as well, so I will link that below. But mankeeping is basically this pseudo feminist academic idea that women have to shoulder the emotional burden for men in their relationships. And basically women are becoming de facto therapists for men. So they're keeping them, or they're, kind of taking care of them. So it's an additional burden. So on top of, all of the perceived household labor that women are supposed to do, and that's a burden on them. Now there's this emotional labor that they can't seem to escape from. And that in part is being driven by male loneliness and male solitude. So that's kind of the culture we're in right now. And it's been largely shaped by pieces like this in the media, just very pessimistic, women giving up on relationships, men also giving up on relationships. And I do think this resonates just based on these two essays, both of which I covered in separate videos, and just the responses that you guys had in the comments. I think this does resonate with a lot of people, and people are just really frustrated and fed up. And so she then goes in to describe kind of what the actual problems are, and she describes this from a millennial perspective. So she says, to millennial women, men can't seem to do anything right, but there's a number of reasons why both men and women are struggling in the mating and relating department. So the first thing she talks about is that millennials are the children of the no-fault divorce boom. I am going to be completely candid and honest with you. Divorce is not in my wheelhouse. I am privileged and blessed that both my parents are still married. I think they just celebrated their 37th anniversary. I forget, but they've been together my entire life. And good role models. All of my close friends are married and, happily so, and have families. So I was exposed to this, and to the extent of, I was in public high school and had friends who went through divorce, but the vast majority, now that I think about it, the vast majority of my classmates and people I socialize with were all products of happy marriages. Honestly, now that I think about it, I think the only kids of divorce that I really interacted with were the girls in my ballet class, and they were kind of mean. So I humbly just went to Google to kind of just edify myself about this, because I'm trying to understand more about what men are going through and why they're so opposed to marriage and relationships. And for me, I really didn't know how bad divorce was, and I didn't know some of the things that women had done to men until I just started diving deeper and thinking more about these things. And so one of the things is there's the financial aspect of it. So a woman could initiate a no-fault divorce, have no reason to do so, and take a guy's money, demand alimony, child support, that kind of stuff. There's obviously child custody piece to it. And then there's the emotional side of things. You could think you're in a happy marriage one day, and then the next day your wife wants a divorce. And I've actually, I did a video on the female boredom epidemic where I talk about this. I shared 2 examples of women who threatened their husbands with divorce because they weren't fulfilled in their marriages, or in the one case the husband wasn't doing enough of the right chores. Not even that he wasn't doing chores, he just wasn't doing them the right way. And both of these women are trying to be influencers and peddle their services and affiliate products and all that stuff by building their social media channels. So that's a caveat to it. But there's definitely cases of women who are just yeah, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, and then they initiate divorce. The man loses the house, kids, dogs, has to pay alimony, potentially part of a pension or 401k. So based on the current legal structure of how marriages are governed in the United States, men have a lot more to lose than women. And I know, I'm speaking for myself, I was completely oblivious to this. And I'm kind of learning about this more and more as I go. But I can see why guys would be hesitant to enter into relationships, especially with women who do want it to be serious and who are expecting, a proposal and marriage out of it, because there is a lot on the line for them. And so I also asked, what percentage of divorces are no-fault divorce? Google AI didn't really give me a solid number, but just said the vast majority. And then, according to the American Sociological Association, approximately 70% of divorces in heterosexual marriages are initiated by women. So, women are the ones who have benefited the most from no-fault divorces. And I don't think millennial and Gen Z women really understand how much power they have and how much guys have to lose in today's dating market. So that's one example, one piece of the problem. Another thing is millennial women in the workforce. So she writes, millennials entered the workplace as girl boss style feminism was encouraging women to act more like men, aggressive, empowered to take what they want, while simultaneously turning men into women. They were told to check their privilege, take up less space, not interrupt. I think that definitely plays a role too. Women have become little men, or equivalents to men. Men want equality, so now they're competing with men in the workplace. And so, she goes on to say, as women earned more and got older, establishing themselves more fully in the world, it became less clear to them what a man might bring to the table. So, on the one hand, you have women who have become girl bosses and they're, moving up in their careers. They are making more money. Contrary to the people who seem to think that there's a gender pay gap, women are making far more money than they ever have before. So women are the breadwinners. They have what they need. They can provide for themselves. Like, they don't need a man anymore. And a lot of women, probably say this, like, oh, I don't need no man. I can do whatever I want. So women don't feel like men are bringing anything to the table. And because of the whole nature of being a girl boss, women are depriving men of the fundamental desire to provide and protect for women. So when you're in like a girl boss dominant relationship, it puts men in a subordinate, inferior position. And I would suspect most self-respecting men wouldn't want to do that to themselves. But at the same time, men are also looking at this and saying, well, what do you bring to the table? Women, because they are girl bosses, they don't want to cook. They don't want to clean. They don't want to do stuff around the house. They don't want to have a garden. They don't want to do traditional domestic activities that women and more traditional women tend to do. So it's what are each side bringing to the relationship anymore? The more that women can meet their own needs and they don't need men, and the more that men see nothing on the table in terms of what they're going to get out of a relationship either, I think this is pushing both sides to go their own way. And then the last piece is the dating apps. It talks about how it encourages people to make decisions based on superficial criteria and to obsess over metrics instead of chemistry. And I do think there is an element of that too. I don't necessarily think that the dating apps are in and of themselves completely bad. I think they're a tool, kind of just like anything else. Same with social media. I think social media is a tool, but depending on how you use it and the boundaries and parameters you set around your use of those tools, it can be a bad thing. It can make it harder for you to find relationships. And if you're just so obsessed, I would even say, I would go further to say it's social media, not so much the dating apps. I think social media has really changed how we interact and communicate with one another. And I see this all the time. If you go out to eat at a restaurant, just take a moment and look around. Most people are sitting on their phones. You have iPad kids now. People don't know how to have conversations with one another. So even if you went onto a date with someone, what is the value of that interaction in a narcissistic, self-obsessed world where everyone is on social media all the time? Everyone's scrolling on their phones. You really have to work hard these days to seek out community, seek out relationships, and have conversations with one another. There's something I do that I think a lot of people would be shocked at, but sometimes we'll leave the house and I won't even take my phone with me. Like, I just don't need it. We'll take the dogs to the dog park. We'll go downtown and go for a walk. We'll do something, and I'll leave my phone at home and I won't have it for several hours at a time. And that's totally fine with me. I have everything I need, and I don't need to constantly scroll through my phone. So why bring it with me? And I'm sure there are, if there's women watching this or even some guys, they would be like, how on earth do you function without your phone? I've just adapted and learned, like, I don't need it all the time. And I think most of us would be wiser for that. You just turn off your phone. Again, tools are tools. A hammer is a tool. A hammer can also be a weapon. So understand how these tools work, set boundaries and parameters, and, keep your humanness grounded and centered first when you're using these apps, especially when it comes to relationship with other people. So I think she highlights that those are the 3 reasons why a lot of people are struggling right now with relationships. But the thing she highlights the most is all of this has shaped a narrative that people believe. And when people believe it, it comes to be true. So she says, we're pessimistic. We don't trust each other. We're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And we believe deep down that the other sex is out to get us and more loyal to their own kind than to us. The best way to counter all this is by not buying any of it. And I think this is absolutely true. There's just this overwhelming pessimism that falls along gender lines, that the opposite gender is your enemy and they're out to get you. And she highlights a piece of this up here, talking about how men became an obstacle to the life women want, were expected to have. What if he tries to take away your independence? Having a family is a career killer instead of a portal to it. And I think that's really interesting to look at it. And this is something I've fallen victim to, right? In my 20s, I was all about the girl boss life and working hard and hustling, and genuinely feared having kids and getting married and starting a family because I thought it would limit me. And, as I've gotten older and matured, I've started to realize, wait a minute, what if all that is the opportunity I didn't know existed? So to give you an example, so I love to learn. Learning is something I'm super passionate about. Some people think I should have gone to school to be a teacher. That's neither here nor there. But I'm really excited about the prospect of having kids in the future and homeschooling them and being able to give them the education I would have wanted to have. I love the idea of classical education and going back to the works of Greek philosophers and really diving into those and different types of thinking and like the Socratic method and all that kind of stuff. So I love the idea that I'm going to have the opportunity, hopefully in the future, to go back to school and educate myself alongside my kids and learn the things I didn't get the chance to learn and read all of the masterworks and the great works of Western civilization alongside them. Like, that is so exciting to me. And I see, family as a means to that end. That's like a great opportunity. It's not like people frame, especially feminists, frame motherhood as imprisoning. And I see it as an opportunity. And another example is cooking. I love cooking. It's so fun. One of the biggest problems when you're cooking for just 1 or 2 people is you have a ton of leftovers, or in my case, I bake cookies and then we just eat them all. So I'm super excited to have kids who I can feed cookies to and have a multitude of different snacks and desserts and just get to cook all the time and get to share cooking with them. Like, what is more exciting than that? That's just, I can't wait for that. So yeah, like, you can either look at having kids and having a family as the end of your life, the end of your career, or you can see it as an opportunity to do things that you genuinely enjoy as a person and share them with another human being and teach them and watch them, develop some of the same passions that you enjoy. And I think as we move into a post-work world where jobs are going to take on a whole different meaning once AI becomes fully mature, and once there aren't as many jobs to go around, and once we lose our social value because we no longer have jobs, I think it's going to become even more important for women especially to tap into motherhood and domestic life and the things that they can control versus, this girl boss made up world that really is completely out of their control. So she talks about here, referencing Sex and the City, and she talks about it from the perspective that there was a lot more levity back in the day. So, maybe a decade or 2 ago, dating was fun, and it's not fun anymore. So she would say they were enjoying themselves. They'd have a date, it would go well or go horribly, and regardless, they'd all be laughing about it the next day at dinner before doing it all again. And I think that's really telling with the current culture. The whole T app data breach was made public about a week or so ago. And if you haven't been following, that was an app where women could effectively gossip and write things about men. Some may be credible about guys who catfished or guys who are dating other women simultaneously, but there's also a place for women just to like air the dirty laundry of their dates. So we've gone from this place where you could chalk up a bad date, laugh about it, to really belittling men, sometimes in real time. You know, there's stories of guys who will go up to girls, ask them if they want to dance or ask them to get coffee. The girl will rebuff him, say no, and then she'll start giggling about it and making fun of him as he walks away. So, of course, guys don't want to approach women in public. I wouldn't want to approach a woman like that either. But we've moved into this world where girls take dating so seriously, and if you do the wrong thing, you say the wrong thing, you could give consent, but then they can retroactively withdraw it and like ruin your entire life. There's just so much is at stake now in dating, and it's just so superficial. Like, even if you don't want marriage out of it, even if you're like in your early 20s and you just want to have fun, you can't, because more often than not, a woman in whatever, you know, dating relationship you're in could put you on blast on social media, could spread rumors about you that could hurt you, could put your name out there, especially hurt you, your career, could lead to criminal allegations. There's just so much, you know, so much to it. And yeah, I can understand why guys don't want to participate in that. I think we need to just find levity again in dating. And so she goes on to conclude this paragraph by, you know, talking about how it wasn't so much about the seriousness of dating, but the opportunity to try on different lives for size. So what if you were a housewife? What if you moved to Paris? What if you dated someone younger than you, older, a lot older? Just opportunities to explore and learn about yourself. And I covered a woman in my female boredom epidemic video who I thought she was bored with her life because she had FOMO basically for what she didn't get to experience in her 20s. I think she got married when she was like 22. So she had been married for a decade and was like, I don't even know myself. And that makes it abundantly clear that part of the reason why women don't know themselves because they're not trying on different lives. They're not doing different things. You know, I've lived overseas. I've traveled the country. I worked in the government. I've worked for myself. I've done, you know, remote work. I've done a bunch of side hustles. I've done all sorts of things. And one of the things that has pushed me to do all those different things is I'm just really a curious person. I want to experiment with different things and try different things. And I know, you know, where I start might not be where I end up. And that's okay. And I realize I'm an anomaly and I take a lot of risks where a lot of other people wouldn't. I was willing to throw away an otherwise good career because it didn't suit me and I wanted to see what else was out there. And so, yeah, I can resonate with a lot of this because, you know, something that is gaining traction right now in society is this idea of a trad wife. And there's the cosplaying types who are on social media, you know, performing for Instagram, performing for TikTok. But then there are the actual housewives who have businesses who are just sharing what their family does on social media. And some of those women are fine and they're good. Others, you know, not so much. So, you know, you have to be a little discerning. But, you know, I think we have this image of what a housewife is in our minds, you know, 1950s, June Cleaver, you're sequestered in the suburbs, your husband's abusive and you're not allowed to go do anything. Whereas in reality, there's tons of women who are running businesses from their homes, raising their kids from home. Some are homeschooling, some aren't. You know, some are product-based businesses, some are service-based businesses, but they're doing all sorts of things. They cook, they clean, they design, they sew, they have beautiful gardens. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. And we've demonized that. So like, yeah, what if you gave up your career and you tried being a housewife and you liked it and you found freedom in it because it gave you the opportunity to do something that you could never do in a 9-to-5 job? I don't think women look at it that way. So I do think there's value in just, again, bringing some levity back to dating, but being open-minded. Like, just because you do one thing today doesn't mean that's going to be what you have to do tomorrow. It's not going to be permanent. Like, life is all about movement. It's a cycle between life and entropy, and you're just constantly moving and growing. And if you're stuck in the same thing, if you're a girl boss for 50 plus years, that is boring. So I would hope people would approach, you know, relationships and themselves even with this more open-mindedness and this curiosity to kind of see what's out there, see what fits you, see what you might like as an individual, not what society has prescribed for you. And so she says here, single men and women need to go back, not to the 50s or to caveman times, but to first principles. I also did a separate video about going back to the 1950s. And this is kind of what I was getting at. I think people in the comments of that were like, oh, she's telling us to go back to, Jim Crow segregation. And it's like, no, I'm not literally saying let's go back to the 1950s. I'm saying let's go back to a period of time where we had shared values as a society. So we were all polite to one another. Young kids say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You open the door for other people regardless. Like, yeah, I can open my own door, but guess what? It's really nice when someone opens the door for me, and I make an effort. If there's someone coming or, in the vicinity, when I'm trying to leave, I'll hold the door for them too. It's just kindness and just respect and just being nice to other people. And we've lost that. And that's really reflective in the dating market and how men and women both approach relationships. So I definitely agree with this. We need to go back to a time of principles and values where we have the same ethos about kind of where we're going as a culture, as a society, as a country. And so she talks about another thing that a friend of hers said, but this kind of gets back to that as well. Women want to be cherished and men want to be respected. Men should practice being chivalrous and women should practice being gracious. And I think this is more important than ever before. You look at social media, you look at how women are performing for social media. They're putting their families on blast and they're not gracious. They're not appreciative. Like I was saying before in the female boredom epidemic video, these women are able to do things, or I don't think either of those women that I referenced in that video are working full time. My understanding is I think they're trying to build businesses and work for themselves and do like the influencer thing. But their husbands are making it possible for them to do that. They're the ones who are ensuring there's a roof over their head and there's food on the table, and there's money in the bank. So women should be like have gratitude and be gracious and not be as narcissistic and self-obsessed as they are. It's really quite repulsive. And men just want to be respected. And I get that. Like, I would too. And, it goes both ways. Men need to practice chivalry and respect, but in order for men to do that, women have to be willing to be respected. And I think women have lost that. Women complain that men don't practice chivalry anymore. But the value that women used to have that would make men want to be chivalrous towards them, women have degraded themselves. Like, we have OF girls now. Like that's, the pinnacle of success for a lot of young girls. And it's just, there's nothing like, why would a man want to be chivalrous towards that? So I think women have to hold themselves up to a higher standard and be something that men want to, value and pursue and be chivalrous towards. And so I think it does go both ways. And so she says, while it's tempting to blame the other sex for the fact that you're single, it's only going to get you further from where you want to go. If you walk into a date positive that the person across from you will disappoint you horrendously, why even show up? And I think this is a question a lot of guys are asking right now. Like, so many people, especially women, are going into relationships and going into dates with this preconceived notion of how it's going to go. They don't have an open mind. They assume all men are out to get them. They're out to stifle their careers and redomesticate them and do whatever else. And that's not necessarily true. And so they're not. And then, of course, there's those stupid abstract, metrics like he has to be 6 foot, make 6 figures, all that kind of stuff. So if women are able to get past that and have an open mind, they might expose themselves to opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. And so I think, like, why would you go up to a date? Like, why waste your time and show up if you're expecting, to be disappointed? And I think the fact that women do show up to dates where they have this preconceived notion is very revealing, because it tells men very explicitly the only thing they want out of that is a free dinner or gifts or, someone to pay their rent. Like, they're just looking, they look at guys like they're an ATM. And I think men see this. And who wants to be seen that way? Again, that's not respectful. That's not respectful at all. So I think when women believe that men are out to get them, men are evil, but they still show up to dates and then they expect things from that, it becomes very transactional. And it's repulsed, I think, a lot of men. So she goes on to say, we live in a world full of other women telling us men are trash and dating is pointless and we might as well give up. And it's the same for men. The incels have already given up and the heterofatalists are next. So yeah, she really paints a picture of kind of where we're at. People are just, fed up. Why bother? Why bother at this point? And so she wraps this up by talking about, like, what if you imagine what it is you're giving up instead of believing that women are doomed? What if you picture a future in which things have worked out? What if you are more optimistic and see potential or at least the possibility for potential where it might not currently exist? And just, recognize that, again, kind of with the Sex and the City example, but dating should be fun. Trying to find a partner should be fun. And, if marriage is the goal, great, find someone who's aligned with that. But if not, really going through the process of dating isn't necessarily a waste of your time because it helps you as a person grow, right? You learn more about yourself through the process of dating. You figure out what you want, what's actually important to you, not these stupid superficial things. Like, I'm sorry, but having a guy that's 6 foot is not important. Like, at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. We were, and it's funny to me that is so important to women because we were going through a military museum here and they had a display from World War II. And I think the average height of a soldier who fought in World War II was 5'8". So the majority of men aren't even, 6 foot. And the ones who you probably do want a relationship with, someone who's going to go fight for you in times of war or in times of need, probably aren't going to be 6 foot either. So I think women do need to recalibrate their expectations and stop with this stupid 6 foot shenanigans. It's just so dumb. Imagine if guys walked around and were like, yeah, I'm only going to date a girl with a 27-inch waistline. The women's sphere would be outraged over that. So the fact that the whole 6 foot thing is still a thing just blows my mind. Okay. Yeah. So that's where she ends it. She herself admits that she's still looking for a relationship, but she's optimistic and, that kind of thing. So, I thought this was a bit of a breath of fresh air. I think there are more opportunities out there than people realize. And I think the internet, especially social media, has really cast dating in such a negative light. And, obviously I comment on this as well, but I don't think all hope is lost. I do think there are opportunities, but what it comes down to is you as an individual being willing to take action. So stepping outside of your comfort zone, maybe using the apps or approaching the apps with a different mindset. I moved to a different city. I moved halfway across the country. Dating became my number one priority and, marriage especially. And so I literally picked up and moved halfway across the country because the place I was living wasn't meeting that need for me. So, if you live in a big city like New York, it's probably going to be hard to date for a lot of reasons. It's very expensive. If you're a guy, you're stuck with girl boss culture. If you're a girl, there's just a lot of competition. Maybe it's hard for you to find, the right person. So I would challenge you to look in different areas, go different places, think of where you are now and where you want to be in 5 to 10 years. And then go to a physical place where that exists. For me, family is important. So I'm in a physical space where that is going to become a possibility, right? But a decade ago, I was living in Washington, D.C. That was not it's really hard to start a family and raise a family in D.C. proper. It's just expensive and just very difficult to do. So, figure out for yourself what your priority is and take action to actually put the gears into motion where that reality can come to fruition, and then just change your perspective and have an open mind. And I know, it's easy to say that, but it really does help. Have an open mind about dating, about, finances, about your career. It just changing your mindset is really fundamental to all that, because when you have a pessimistic outlook, you only see the negative, and then you get the confirmation bias that reinforces the negative. You have to be willing to expose yourself to different things and prove to yourself that you can do hard things, and just get yourself out there. And I think that helps a lot. So I wouldn't write off dating and marriage. And I know I covered some things in here, and she covers some things in the piece where, yeah, of course, guys would want to, not date, not get married, like no fault divorce, hello. But, hopefully I've shared, myself as an example. Like, not all women are like that. Not all women are aware of, no fault divorce and what they potentially have to gain out of, guys. Not all women are out there to, scam men and get guys to settle down, have kids, only to, leave them. So there are good women out there, and there are good men out there. You have to look. It's gotten harder, but if you take initiative, get off your phone, turn off social media for a little bit, like go live in the real world and do things. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the outcome. So that's all I got for you today. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you would like and subscribe. And if you know anyone in your network who could benefit from an analysis of a piece like this in a more positive way to look at the dating market, I'd love it if you share it with them. All right, I'll see you in the next video.